Let me just quickly double check. We've gotten this question now from a few parents, which is what to do with ED, RD, EA, which is regular decision, early decision, and early action. So let's just quickly kind of go through this. For those who do not know, I'm going to cover this in maybe 7 minutes. For those who don't know, we are an academic and college advising firm located in the Bay Area, and we now have 3 offices. And our whole motto is let's focus on the student, not the college. The whole college admissions landscape is a little bit crazy right now, and so all the more reason for us to focus on what truly matters, which is the student. We're holistic in our approach, and our whole objective is to have happier students, less stressed families, and better admission outcomes by following the student, not the college. So, quick thing about our differentiation. Our strategy centers around the student and not the college. We're super data driven, and I'll actually walk through some of our data with you. And we're really integrated into our community. We know our schools. And just to quickly also highlight, we are actually sponsoring half a dozen high schools this year and a couple of academic foundations. And I'm so thrilled about that. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. And also, too, we strive for in-person versus Zoom, and we strive to have a one-person connection versus many. So this way, it just helps facilitate more trust between the student and their consultant. So that's us. About me, I think you may have now seen me do a few of these. I'm the owner of StrivePath, and I'm also the founder. My background is finance, having done banking. I also did consulting, went to Cornell and Columbia, and spent the last 15 years in healthcare. Started this because I felt like we're doing college admissions a little bit backwards, and so my whole objective here is to almost reset everyone and focus everyone on what matters, which is the student. So, to the meat. Okay, so what you're looking at here, by the way, we crunched a lot of numbers. We looked at a bunch of different schools, actually over 300 schools or colleges. We took a look at their regular admission rate. So for those schools that had early admission, we actually took out the early admission rate to get the regular admission rate. Then we took a look at the early admission rate, and then this early admit over RD premium. This is how much easier, or not easier rather, how much greater the likelihood of a random student getting accepted would be, and via early decision than regular. And then I also have some data here on the proportion of classes filled with early. And this is actually very helpful. And so here's, I'd say, the takeaway. There are some schools that really love early decision. So if you take a look at Northeastern's early admission rate is 39% versus regular 4.5%. So if you've actually already been speaking with us, you already know this. Tulane is another great one. They actually have a number of ED rounds as well. And so these are schools that really prioritize trying to fill up their classes with early admits. Now, there are, of course, some other colleges like Amherst, which we'll get to in a second, who might be reserving their early spots for a different type of student. But net, for some schools, early admit rates can be much higher than regular admit rates, which means if there's a school that you really like, check out their early admit rates to see if it makes sense for you to apply early. We're going to cover that. All right, what is ED versus EA versus REA? So early decision, I think the big thing to know is it is binding. You have to commit to attend if you're accepted. Early action may not be binding, and restrictive early action also may not be binding. They're just more restrictive with respect to like the other schools you can apply to or not apply to. The application deadline, typically November, right? But rolling admissions, which we'll get to later, those applications are open now. So if you're looking at primarily Pittsburgh, Penn State, and what's the other one? Those are the two. There's a third one that I'm blanking on. Michigan State. So those are the 3 schools that some of our Bay Area students really enjoy applying to and attending. They've got rolling admissions. So for them, their deadline obviously is like the regular deadline, but the sooner you apply, the sooner they can take a look at your application. Decision notification, you can see here December to February. And other applications. So if you apply to early decision, you can't apply to other schools. You could, in some cases, apply EA to other schools. Early action, you can still apply to multiple schools. Restrictive early action would be like a Harvard or a Princeton. You can't apply EA or ED to private schools via early decision or early action. And then commitment, you must attend if accepted. And then here with early action, there's no commitment until May 1st. Okay. Now, I want to also just level set that this was not designed to benefit the student, unfortunately. Colleges are businesses, and so obviously they are looking out for their best interest, which is yield. And so in today's market, where you've got students applying to like over 20 colleges, managing yield is super important, especially for those that may not be like in the top, call it, 30 to 40 ranking, right? And they're fighting for yield. And so they've got ED, restrictive early action to kind of help, I'd say, lock in students early, at least mentally, so they don't have to worry about yield. Now, a lot of these admit slots are reserved for athletes and full pay students. And so what colleges really want to avoid is they want to avoid low yield, which leads to low enrollment, which leads to finance issues. Right now, it's gotten so unpredictable for colleges to know, unless, of course, you're in like the top 20, 30 schools, what your enrollment's going to look like. And so there's just a massive fight, right, to maximize yield, which means yield, by the way, is if you give admission offers to 100 students, how many of those will actually attend? Okay, so, all right. Now, in the cases where it actually would benefit the student, if you're an athlete and you've got like the verbal apply here, ED, and you're in, that typically happens with the Ivies, or if it's legitimately your top choice, like we've got students who really like American, really like George Washington, and your acceptance rates are a lot higher if you apply ED, and if you're not worried about college costs, then go for it. And of course, if you can get your materials done in time. Now, the other thing to note too is, with respect to financial aid, applying early the early applicant pool, sometimes colleges will actually try to fill that up with full pay, so students who can pay the full price of tuition. And so in some scenarios, we get the question like, should I mark down full pay? Should I mark down I need financial aid? Mark down legitimately whatever it is that you need, right? If you need financial aid, mark that down. If you don't, don't mark it down. Because I think what'll be the worst case is if you apply early decision and you get in, you realize you actually can't afford it because you said, I don't need financial aid. And now you're in this really tough pickle, right? Which kind of brings me to the last point, which is reneging your offer of admission. If it's binding, it won't hurt you as much as it's going to hurt your school or in your classmates. And so if you've got siblings, if you've got friends in school, as many of you do, as all of you do, please try not to renege, right? Let's try to kind of keep things above board. But if you legitimately said hey, I need aid, you get an offer of admission and the aid is not that great, then I think that's a very different conversation. And I think the door is much more open for you to say look, I legit cannot afford to come here. All right. And then also class sizes may also impact ED chances. So what I mean by this is, smaller colleges are most likely to use more of their ED slots for athletes or other special cases. So an example is Amherst. Amherst, if I go back here, so Amherst, so they have an early admission of 32%, but turns out 70 of their admit slots are actually for athletes. And so once you pull out the 70 admit slots for athletes, their admission rate actually drops from 34% to 20%. So keep that in mind. So if you see a high ED over RD multiple or EA over RD multiple, just factor in class size. Typically, the larger the class size, the more likely it actually legitimately is a better shot for you to get in if you were to apply early action or early decision. Last thing, rolling admissions. These are the popular schools: Penn State, Michigan State, Pittsburgh. This is non-restrictive, right? So if you're targeting school with rolling admissions, try to get your application in as soon as possible. It's easier to get admitted when fewer slots have been taken up. And you're also not locked in or bound if you're accepted into that institution, right? So these are the popular ones. Actually, I added Portland State. So really it's Penn State, Portland State, Pittsburgh, and how am I always forgetting this one? Anyways, I think Michigan State. Cool. It's like the 3 P's in the end. Cool. And then with that, thank you so much. Do not hesitate to contact us if we can be helpful. That's our email. That's our phone. Although with our phone, just really leave a voicemail. We get a lot of spam callers, so just leave a voicemail and I'll give you a call or a text back. So with that, thanks so much. Have an awesome Labor Day weekend. Oh my God, how is it almost September? Bye.